For this video, I'm actually going to have to do something a bit different. This is not the first time that I've ever done a review for a recently ended series that I've spoken about before, but I'm in a particular conundrum this time because by all rights, My Hero Academia is not yet at an end. Without spoiling anything, what we have right now is 13 episodes and a story that looks like it is far from over. Thankfully, we've already received an announcement of a continuing second season, though at this point, details about it beyond its existence are few and far between. So my format has to change slightly because not only have I spoken about the story's setup before, there's no real ending to talk about either. And anything in the middle that I can talk about is spoiler central, so here's what I'm going to do. Consider this video a continuation of my first reaction video. So if you haven't watched that, you can go ahead right now. There will be a link up on the screen here somewhere, I'm sure. And I'm just going to rant a bit about My Hero Academia to wrap up my thoughts on just this initial part of the story. I plan on talking about a lot of things, therefore, spoilers. So if you just want to know whether or not My Hero Academia is worth your time, again, check out the FR because there I only go over the first 3 episodes and there's not much to spoil in that. So with that out of the way, ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Akata, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, Season 1 of My Hero Academia. Let's jam. Where we left off, we had Deku, a quirkless wannabe hero in a world of superpowered individuals. We had his idol, All Might, a Superman-like figure with dark and potentially devastating limitations, and barely a hint of the many heroes and quirks still yet to be introduced. As predicted, Deku actually does indeed gain a quirk, though it is through unconventional means. He ate his hair? I mean, it's kind of cool because you gain superpowers, but because of this, coupled with his rather fragile and quirkless body, he cannot fully control his newfound powers. This is actually the start of what I consider to be extremely good storytelling done in a short amount of time. See, all good superhero stories usually involve keeping a secret identity. Though, for the most part here in MHA, those identities don't matter to a large extent between the heroes themselves. As such, making it so that All Might, the most powerful hero, indeed has a secret identity that must be kept hidden even from other heroes is a fascinating plot point. On top of which, even though Deku is in the process of inheriting the power of One for All, the way that this is handled both makes logical sense while also being a narrative convenience. Because Deku cannot control his powers, it actually ends up masking what his powers actually do. It doesn't look like he has the powers of All Might because he breaks his bones every time he uses them. And All Might always looks perfectly fine when he's going and doing superhero-like stuff, so no one will draw the connection there. It's also a perfect cover for his backstory because he could claim that he's always had this power, but he never used it for fear of breaking his body in half. Though, you know, that would just further anger his classmate, Bakugo. Now, Bakugo is an interesting case as well because we don't really know where his story is eventually going to end up. Looking at both his attitude and his actions, at times it's almost foreshadowed that he will eventually not be a hero at all, but rather a villain. And, you know, potentially playing a major antagonist down the line. He's quick to anger, spiteful, and has powers far more destructive than a lot of his peers. On the other hand, it's also quite likely that he might go the way of Piccolo or Vegeta, antagonist turned good guy through the power of friendship and what have you. The groundwork for this started to come later as he and Deku square off and he gets the chance to vent for a while, though even after venting, he still holds a bit of a grudge against Deku for a variety of reasons. Though with luck, this potential problem in his personal story can be handled in other ways. Bakugo is very prideful, and it's not just Deku that challenges that. In elementary school, he was the top dog, the most powerful, the one that people looked up to out of both respect and fear. But now, in this new environment, that's not the case anymore. Even among his immediate peers, he's not more intelligent or strategic, nor even in the realm of brute strength is he the one on top. And he knows it. This was the part of his arc that I really adored because both how he and Deku handled their peer relationships kind of mirrors my own. In elementary school, I had few friends, 1 or 2 very close friends, and then a bunch of acquaintances who weren't really friends, but at least they never bullied me, so they were just kind of neutral. So socially, this always had me stuck in this kind of closed-off shell. It wasn't until high school where I was really able to make any dent in that shell, with not only the change in environment, but also the massive change to status quo among my peers. Because my high school was 3 times the size of my elementary school and had the graduating classes of at least 3 elementary schools feeding into it. In my case, it was like Deku, who never really had friends, suddenly finding some that respected him for who he was. Though with Bakugo, it was the opposite, and how he learns and hopefully grows from this experience will be a massive part of his character arc to come. Now, one of the problems, though, that I have been finding with this series is that there are just way too many characters and a very short amount of time. Like, beyond Deku, Bakugo, and All Might, we have varying degrees of development. As good as characters like Ochako and Ida seem to be, they get very little screen time to give us any sort of development. We don't really get a sense of who they are beyond, like, the caring and supportive in Ochako's case, and the more honorable and loyal in Ida's case. And this goes for other characters too, like Todoroki and Asui, and even the teacher Aizawa, though he does get more screen time than most. You have this massive cast, but only 13 episodes, so characters are going to be left out. But how everything is laid out is both smart enough and in some ways evil enough to get you to care and appreciate these background characters. But that's evil because there's no guarantee that we will even see much more of them, so you get attached to them and then they're gone, which is depressing. However, this first season feels very much like a prologue, a beginning, a setup for what will hopefully be to come. So those characters will hopefully get more story time, and we can try and sit here and predict what may or may not happen in the future of the story. Sure, you can just read the manga, but if you're like me, that won't be happening anytime soon. And, who knows, this is a Bones animated series, so the manga might not even matter past a certain point if Bones decides that they want to go another way. And I'm not sure how the manga is handling All Might's condition right now. And if you know, please, for the love of whatever god or deity that you worship, don't tell me. But honestly, I'm expecting and hoping that All Might's condition has a tipping point that comes with it soon. Like, at the start of the next season, preferably. All Might is the world's paragon of hope and goodness, and yet almost because of that, he risks it constantly. Despite only having 3 hours a day in super mode, he squanders most of that doing deeds that could be handled by lesser heroes, only for a situation to come up where he is desperately needed and can barely handle himself. It's made obvious at this point that there is some shadowy entity that wants him dead. But All Might dying would be a massive blow to the morale of the citizens, and it would almost surely have unpredictable amounts of mayhem occurring in the world because of it. They've already stated in the show that there are criminals operating in the same city as All Might, even though they know that he's around. So knowing that he's around and not really feeling the threat of him at all would only become worse if they knew he was dead. All hell would just break loose. So All Might putting himself into situations that could compromise this is exceedingly dangerous. Yes, you could argue that in this particular case at the end of the series, he needed to do what he did because it's not like the children could have faced that monstrosity of a black monster. But eventually there might come a time where All Might's continued existence is of far more importance than anything else, which would make for an interesting story arc if that indeed is what ends up happening. At the very least, he needs to scale back his hero activities down much further than he already has, preferably until Deku can control his powers much better, but we'll have to see. Now, as far as animation goes, it's Bones. It's really stellar for what it wants to do, and considering that there's only 13 episodes of it, it's able to do everything quite well. A lot of the art and designs of the show help to give off that superhero feel, the colors especially. Most of the character designs as well are also quite detailed, and considering how many of them there are, this was rather impressive. A superhero's costume makes up a very large part of their character identity, so it's nice to know that even with background characters, the detail is still there. Sure, all of this is just taken from the manga, but still, Bones could have been lazy about it if they had wanted to. I'm glad they weren't. The opening song for the series was done by a group called Porno Graffiti, which is an interesting choice considering what most Western fans and anime fans in general know them for, as most of us will conjure up and recall their previous work on the 2003 Fullmetal Alchemist first opening. There are quite a few parallels between these two openings, including the obvious, like Bones, but then there's also the fact that everything with this show in the West is being handled by Funimation, whose dub has made it quite apparent that they haven't forgotten about Fullmetal Alchemist one bit.
Please sign my notebook! Ah! He already did! Ah! Thank you you so much! This will be an heirloom, a family treasure passed down for generations to come!
And since we're talking about the dub, I did find the response to it rather interesting after my first reaction went up. There was quite a bit of a negative reaction towards it among fans and watchers, and I never really understood why. I still don't. Justin Briner's performance as Izuku specifically I thought worked out really well, and sure, having Chris Sabat as All Might was kind of the obvious pick. A little too obvious, perhaps. But all in all, I rather enjoyed the dub, and if it came out at the same time as the sub, that's the version that I would have been watching all the way through. I do realize that the dub versus sub war is still in effect, and sub purists will disagree with me, but hey, you guys enjoy the anime you want to, and I'll do the same. My Hero Academia can come off as cliche. It's a superhero story in an era of pop culture where we just have so many of those already to choose from. But that said, it doesn't constantly hammer down the same tropes that we've seen time and time again, and its story so far has been one that sets things up nicely for the seasons to come. Though coming up with a verdict is somewhat difficult, mostly because I know that when season 2 comes out, future me will most likely have a different opinion on this first season than I do now. Like, I'd find it very hard to decide whether to tell people to just watch the show or to buy it, because I don't want to say buy it only to regret that later if future seasons aren't as good. So for the moment, I'm actually going to abstain from a proper rating this time around. That said, I do plan on buying the series myself, and that's not just because I have a moral obligation to, because I've reviewed the show, like I do with everything that I review. And assuming that future seasons will be of the same quality, both narratively and otherwise later on, then the series will be an easy buy. But until I know that, I don't think it's fair to award it officially as such just yet. My rating system probably needs to be updated again and changed to account for this sort of thing in the future, as I think it's actually going to be a more frequent problem. But until then, this is what I'm going to do. At the time of this video, My Hero Academia has been licensed and is available from Funimation Entertainment, with what I would assume to be a home video release forthcoming. And they also have the show for legal streaming in both sub and dub on their website, if you happen to have access to it. For alternate anime recommendations, the first obvious one is for a series called Tiger and Bunny. There are a few anime out there that deal with a more Western kind of superhero and not a kind of Super Sentai-like team. But Tiger and Bunny is an example of one that actually performs quite well, with some interesting and unique ideas to boot. Second recommendation would go to One Punch Man, but I feel like that's a bit too obvious. So we're gonna go with Assassination Classroom. That one's less on the whole superhero business, but it does have similar school elements, just with assassins instead of superheroes. And between those two, you should hopefully find something to your liking. And that's it for me. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and hey, if you like what I do here and feel like helping out, please consider going and checking out my Patreon page, and if you feel it within your heart, also consider donating. Very special thanks to Mark Robichaud, Halo Millennium, Grace Anderson, Lulika Adachi, Victor Ekmark, Calhoun Boy, Nikolai Gray, and Joshua Garcia for donating already. You guys were all especially awesome, and I thank you. Until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.